Senator Bernie Sanders vowing to stay in the race for president, telling supporters yesterday he's very much looking forward to Sunday's debate with his good friend Joe.
He did, however, acknowledge that the results of Tuesday's nominating contest were not good.
While we are currently losing the delegate count, approximately 800 delegates for Joe Biden and 660 for us, we are strongly winning in two enormously important areas which will determine the future of our country. Poll after poll, including exit polls, show that a strong majority of the American people support our progressive agenda.
Joining us to discuss Sanders' strategy moving forward is senior advisor to the campaign and great friend of the show, Chuck Rocha. Good to see you, sir.
It's good to be back. It's good to be seen. Proof alive for all my friends on the internet.
Indeed.
He's around. He's alive.
We may not be able to be in person here for much longer, so good to see your face.
6 feet back.
So what is the plan? What's the strategy? What's the path forward?
So I would remind everybody that Joe Biden lost the first three contests pretty handily, and we were all writing his obituary, and things changed dramatically over 72 hours. Look, we had a tough road on Tuesday, and what we want is the one-on-one shot, right? Because we know things could happen quickly. We can always look back on things we should have and could have done, as my papa would say, shoulda, woulda, coulda. But now we have to look forward on what's ahead. And the good news for us is not only do we have a one-on-one debate where we make them stand up and look at each other and debate these issues that he talked about yesterday, but we head into states like Arizona. You know what there's a lot of in Arizona? Latinos.
That's right.
So people also don't realize that there's more Latinos in Chicago than the entire state of Arizona. So we do have some backstop there. We do have places that look good for us. Look, Florida's going to be a challenge. There's no doubt it's a challenge. Ohio is a big state, right? But we know that we can't just walk away from this without having that one-on-one debate to talk about these issues. And that's why he stayed in yesterday, and that's why he said what he had to say.
I was thinking of you when I saw those Latino exit polls in Michigan, and I saw that Bernie had won there. I want to ask Chuck about generally how the amount of pressure that's come on the campaign at this point from the Democratic establishment is immense. I mean, you see Jim Clyburn saying, let's cancel the primary, let's cancel the debate. I imagine that's a sentiment that is widespread throughout the party. Is Bernie and as a campaign, are you guys committed to going through this thing for the long haul all the way to the convention?
That's a great question. I haven't talked to the senator about what will happen after Tuesday. We're kind of taking this week by week, and I'm just going to be really honest with you. I ain't giving you a spin. It's like that's as far as we've thought down the road. We know we have to bite at this and bite at this, but what we do know is that things happen very quickly in this campaign, quicker than I've ever seen them move. The thing that aggravates the fire out of me, and I'm trying to say stuff nice, is that I was out there in the field, and I watched things change in real time, and it was so aggravating to me as a strategist and somebody who had worked and given my blood, sweat, and tears to build organizations, to watch Joe Biden win states where he didn't have a single staff just based off of pure momentum or the press coverage that they were getting, knowing that we had done something special there, that had been all blown away quickly in 72 hours of this momentum.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were sort of disheartened by that because, I mean, we've been talking to you. We know the work that you and the team's been putting on the ground. I mean, we all know people who are making phone calls, who are knocking on doors, who've been chipping in that money, $10 and $20 at a time. And to see all of that flip like that, and like you said, for Joe to win states he'd never even set foot in, didn't have a staffer in, et cetera, it was sort of, just from a perspective of like campaigns and organizing and all of that, it was sort of depressing. What do you think are the lessons to learn from that, though?
Well, the first lesson is you don't jump out because you have a bad night. Things can happen quickly. Yes. That's the difference in presidential politics or every congressional race or state rep race that me and you've been involved in, that things never happen like that.
Right.
We were all rocked back on our heels because I had never seen that in my 31 years of doing this work. But that's exactly why he wants to debate this weekend, is to say if things can happen that quickly going that direction, they can happen as swiftly coming back the other direction. One of the other false narratives that are out there that I'm going to take on today that I haven't talked about and nobody in this campaign has talked about is the African-American outreach. The African-American outreach in this campaign, we spent more money on African-American consultants and vendors and talking to the community time and time and time again. And we learned a lot of lessons on that, right? And the products that we were making, delivering directly into the community was from the community. You heard me talk about this in South Carolina.
Right.
It was quickly evident to me that we were running against Barack Obama's vice president, right? And we always knew we were never going to win that demographic in large numbers, but we needed to cut into it. And guess what? You step back and you have to redo your strategy and do something else. But the one thing that we did do that I won't let anybody else say about this campaign is we invested in that community very intentionally, like we did with the Latino community. It's just a harder community, especially in the South with older African Americans, right? Guess who don't do very good with older Americans, period? Us, right? So don't look at Bernie Sanders in this campaign as we took somebody for granted or we didn't do that work. We did that work when we lost that vote, right? But it wasn't because of lack of trying. And we will continue to try. We lost African Americans in Minnesota by only 9 points.
Right. There are a lot of regional variation and obviously massive generational divide, right?
That's
you look at the number of people under 30 or under 40, it's a very different story. But so do you think that that Vice President Biden's lead with older African Americans, I mean, was that just sort of inevitable? Was there anything that could have been done about that, or was that cake basically baked coming in?
Look, there was a lot of that, and we saw in the numbers early that he's very popular there, right? And we don't take anything away from him or the work he did with President Obama, but we knew we couldn't just, as a lot of the press is saying, walk away from that vote. We went into those neighborhoods and we lost, right? But we at least went and got into the fight. The thing that worries me the most is I don't want to set the wrong precedents. As a person of color, as somebody who runs a business owned by all these kids of color who I work with, I don't want the narrative to be that you can just get an endorsement and then you get all of our votes. You need to come to our community and invest in our community, whether it's the black community, the brown community. And I don't want folks to think that you can walk away from what we built in Nevada with Latinos. That's actually the formula to win. And we got to do a lot of that if we're going to win in November.
I agree with you, Chuck. And the one question is, what happened with the youth vote? Youth vote in Michigan down by 15%. It hasn't materialized in many of these places. It was central to the senator's thesis of how he could win. What went wrong there? What happened?
Again, I will say and push back a little bit. I'm not going to argue the numbers that they were down. It's hard. It's always been hard from the beginning of time to get young folks to go vote. But we were there. We spent the entire summer. And I told a reporter this yesterday, and think about this, both of you, answer some of these questions, is in Iowa and in New Hampshire, we could organize on those college campuses for 6 and 8 months. We had summer schools while they were gone, training folks who were going to come back to school in the fall on the internet. And then when they got there was a campus organizer there. And still, with all of that organizing, we just brought turnout up to about a par of 16, right? Because it takes a lot of an intentional work. And then you go to where there's an accelerated calendar. Things are happening very quickly, and we haven't had people on the ground that long. Then you see even more of a dip because you haven't done that organizing on the ground over the long term, which you need to with the youth vote. I don't think that the youth vote didn't show up. I just think it's harder because they have so many other things that are pulling them from actually going and voting. But they are some of the greatest activists that we have in this campaign, are these folks who drove across the country who I met at campaign rallies, who've sleeping on people's couches, eating McDonald's, like just banging it out every single day on knocking on doors.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to us about planning vis-a-vis coronavirus. Is the senator still traveling? I know rallies have been canceled. I know the live audience has been pulled from the debate. Do you still expect the debate to go forward? Do you think that any of these primary dates are ultimately going to be moved or should be moved?
Look, on the primaries, we have to leave that up to local elected officials who actually run those elections and what their local community health experts say.
Right.
But what bothers me about that, and I think that I stand by the campaign's vision on that piece, like it should be up to local elected officials. But I know that every day I'm calling people in Arizona, asking them to show up, asking them to show up to vote.
Right.
Will you be there? Here's the election day. Show up. And so that's something that concerns me. Am I asking somebody to show up in a nursing home where there's a lot of election places put up in nursing homes who you don't want folks in there? Now they're changing, as everybody on the internet will let you know, they're changing the sites for elections, and so that hurts sometimes.
The president said yesterday, Chuck, that he's advising. I mean, the federal government is now advising that people don't visit nursing homes unless they have non-essential or they have a non-essential reason.
Anybody who's ever run a campaign knows that you set up elections in schools, firehouses, and nursing homes, right? So when folks were losing their mind about them changing last minute in Michigan, that was just a fact of they didn't want folks to come in and vote in a nursing home. When you voted in the same place all your life, like that does affect the election. To your youth piece, you saw the lines at the universities, right? So like that, just like I was when I was that kid, like I wait to the last minute, I show up, and do I really want to stand in that line for 3 hours? A lot of people walked away. Was that the whole case for why the turnout was a little bit down? No, but we should make elections work easier for folks to vote. Like, you shouldn't have to stand in line.
That is
Democrat or Republican, this should be a nonpartisan issue.
It is. It's one of the main issues that we've learned out of this entire mess. And I guess the final question is the vision forward in attacking Joe Biden, or not attacking. And you have to contrast with Joe Biden. There's no question. Senator Sanders laid it out in that press conference. Joe is going to answer for this. Joe is going to answer for this. Why were these questions not brought up earlier? Why is this the first time that some of the American people and Democratic primary voters are hearing about this for the first time?
Look, he always does best when he's behind. He expects to be behind. He operates better when he's behind. I've just known him for long enough, and that's what he does. To your point yesterday, and I was watching because obviously I'm an avid watcher of y'all, is that you were right about something, and you're right about lots of things, but especially this. For what you love and hate about Senator Bernie Sanders, he is going to be him. And he's going to say things about Cuba. He's going to say things. If you ask him something, he's going to tell you exactly how he feels. And guess what? Joe Biden is his friend. Yeah. Maybe he shouldn't say it every time he talks about him, but that's who he is. Love him or hate him, he's going to show you exactly who he is. That's why he talks about Medicare for all and fighting for people out of every breath, because he truly believes that. So he's not going to always do everything that makes everybody on the internet happy all the time, but he's always going to be Senator Sanders.
Well, nobody on the internet is happy all the time. I can tell you from personal recent experience from some of my comments yesterday. Chuck, let me ask you, if you look at the numbers, I mean, even in Michigan, we were looking at the demographic data, and Senator won voters, I think 50 and under. I mean, and the numbers from 30 and under are just overwhelming. 80-some% of voters 30 years old and under go for Senator Sanders. Are those people who have invested so much emotionally and energy-wise and time-wise and who care about the issues of Medicare for All and Green New Deal, if Joe Biden is the nominee, do you think that they're going to turn up for him?
Look, it's going to take a lot of work. And we have the perfect coalition to beat Donald Trump. It's just in two different camps. Yeah. You need all of these older Americans to show up and show up big, but you need all of these younger Americans. And I'll take it a step further. I was talking to a Latino member of Congress last night who said, Chuck, we need direct investment like we've been begging for generations. And thank you for doing what you've done with Senator Sanders, because you proved it was possible. Now we hope that money will flow into these neighborhoods to get us out in the general election, no matter who the nominee is. That's the key to this. Is you just described why it's so hard to get young folks to vote. It's the same with Latinos. My strategy was just to go ask them. Yeah. Right now, I've proven that works. So if we're the nominee, we know how to do it. If Joe Biden is a nominee, he better had learned from that, because we got to have those folks if we're going to win.
Well, that's the most important point you laid out, which is that you do need both sides of the coalition, and a lot of not smart people are saying, oh, Joe Biden's recreating the Obama coalition. I'm like, yeah, well, there were a lot of young people in that coalition.
And a lot of Latinos.
All right, Chuck. Great talking to you as always.
Great to have you, Chuck.
Next on Rising, journalist Ken Klippenstein. He's going to join us to talk about Bloomberg's short-lived campaign and his Biden endorsement. That's after the break.